Eli Vance was the smallest person in the room. He was always the smallest person in the room. The training hall on Prime stretched upward like a cathedral made of black metal and blue light. Hundreds of alien soldiers stood in perfect rows, their bodies strong and strange and beautiful in ways that made Eli feel like a mistake. The warriors towered 8 feet tall, their scaled skin thick as armor, their yellow eyes sharp as knives. They stood like living statues carved from crystal, light bending through their bodies in ways that hurt to look at. They moved with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors with their moods. And then there was Eli, 5'9", soft skin, flat teeth, no claws, no scales, no crystal bones, just a human from Earth's New Geneva colony standing at the back of the formation and trying not to be noticed. It never worked. Commander walked between the rows like a predator choosing prey. His body rippled purple with irritation, and his 4 arms were crossed behind his back. When he reached Eli, he stopped. He always stopped. "Corporal Vance," said, his voice flat, "tell me again why the Coalition wastes resources training your species." Eli kept his eyes forward. "Because humanity joined the Coalition 18 years ago, sir. We have the same rights as any member species." "Rights," repeated. He said the word like it tasted bad. "They earned their place through conquest, through wisdom, through diplomacy that spans 10,000 years. Your species earned its place because you found a radio signal and would not stop making noise until someone answered." Laughter rippled through the formation. Eli felt his face grow hot, but he did not move. "You are the weakest species in this coalition," continued. "Your bones break easily. Your skin tears easily. You cannot see in the dark. You cannot breathe underwater. You cannot survive temperature changes that a child would ignore. You live for barely 100 years, and you spend the first 20 of those years learning to walk and speak properly." He leaned close. "Why are you here, Corporal Vance?" Eli swallowed. "To serve the Coalition, sir." "To serve?" Skin flickered with something like amusement. "We shall see." The training exercise that day was simple. Combat pairs, one-on-one. Eli watched as warriors slammed into each other with enough force to crack stone. He watched soldiers shatter practice dummies with single punches. He watched and waited and hoped his name would not be called. His name was called. His opponent was unnamed. Young for his kind, which still made him 200 years old, stood nearly 3 feet taller than Eli, and his arms were thick as tree trunks. When he smiled, his teeth looked like a row of daggers. "Soft skin," said, rolling his shoulders. "Try not to die." Eli raised his fists. He had trained for this. He had studied fighting styles. He knew that they were slow to turn, that their joints bent in ways that created blind spots, that their confidence often made them careless. None of it mattered. Moved faster than something that large should move. His fist connected with Eli's chest before Eli could even begin to dodge. The world became pain and spinning, and then darkness. When Eli woke up, he was in the medical bay. A machine beeped beside him. His ribs ached with every breath. Through the window, he could see the training hall, and he could hear laughter echoing down the corridor. The nurse, with gentle hands, looked at him with something like pity. "2 cracked ribs, a concussion. You are lucky to be alive." "Lucky?" Eli repeated. "Though it could have killed you." He held back. Eli closed his eyes. He held back. Of course he did, because Eli was not worth killing properly. He was not worth real effort. He was a joke, a curiosity, a soft-skinned primitive that the Coalition tolerated because humanity had rights. When he returned to the barracks that night, someone had carved a word into his locker. The letters were deep and jagged, scratched with claws that could cut through metal. "Fragile." Eli stared at the word for a long time. Then he opened his locker, retrieved his uniform for the next day, and went to sleep. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Coalition archaeologists had discovered something on a dead world called Seven. The planet had been burned to glass 100,000 years ago by forces unknown. Nothing lived there. Nothing had lived there for longer than most species had existed. But deep beneath the glass, sensors had detected a structure, a vault. And inside the vault, something was waiting. Eli's squad was assigned to support the expedition, not as soldiers, not as explorers, as laborers, carry the equipment, set up the tents, stay out of the way while real warriors attempted to claim whatever treasure waited below. The vault was vast and dark and cold. Eli hauled boxes through corridors covered in strange writing that made his head hurt when he looked at it too long. The archaeologists muttered to each other in worried voices. The translators could not read the script. The dating methods could not determine the vault's age. Everything about this place was wrong. And at the center of the vault, resting on a pedestal of black stone, was the weapon. It was a blade, but also not a blade. It seemed to exist in more dimensions than Eli could see, its edges folding into angles that should not have been possible. Dark metal covered in pale script that glowed faintly, like dying stars. Every species had sent their champions to claim it. They sent their greatest warrior. They sent their eldest sage. They sent a diplomat who had negotiated treaties between dying suns. One by one, they approached the weapon. One by one, they were thrown back. The champion flew across the chamber and hit the wall hard enough to crack his scales. The elder touched the blade and screamed as cracks spread through his crystal arm. The diplomat reached for it with all four hands and was blasted with light that left him unconscious for 3 days. Eli watched from the corner, forgotten, invisible, carrying a box of supplies that no one needed. As he set the box down, his hand caught on a sharp edge. Pain flared through his palm. Blood welled up from the cut, bright red against his pale skin. He stumbled, his hand swung out for balance. A single drop of blood fell from his palm and landed on the weapon's surface. The ancient script began to glow. Every eye in the vault turned to Eli, the forgotten human, the soft-skinned primitive, the joke. The blade pulsed once, twice, 3 times, and then words appeared in the air above it, burning in letters that somehow Eli understood, even though he had never seen this language before. Air recognized, seed carrier confirmed, welcome home, child of the first. Eli stared at the blade. The blade seemed to stare back. And very slowly, as if moving through a dream, he reached out and wrapped his bleeding hand around its hilt. The weapon flowed into his grip like water finding its home. The chamber was silent. No one laughed. No one mocked. No one called him soft-skinned or meal-sized or fragile. For the first time in his life, Eli Vance held something that felt like it belonged to him. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered words that would change everything. The silence is waking. The devourers return. You must remember what your ancestors forgot. The blade felt warm in Eli's hand. It felt alive. It felt like it had been waiting for him across 100,000 years of darkness, patient and silent and sure that he would come. Around him, the vault had erupted into chaos. Scientists were shouting into their communicators. Soldiers had drawn their weapons, though none of them seemed certain where to aim. Commander pushed through the crowd, his skin flashing through colors so fast that Eli could not read them. Behind him, the champion was being helped to his feet, his yellow eyes fixed on Eli with an expression that might have been hatred or might have been fear. "Put it down," commanded. His voice cracked slightly. Corporal Vance put the weapon down immediately. Eli tried. He loosened his fingers. He willed his hand to open, but the blade did not move. It had chosen him, and it was not interested in being unchosen. "I cannot," Eli said. His own voice sounded strange to him, distant, like he was hearing it from underwater. "It will not let me." Reached for him with all 4 arms. The moment his fingers touched Eli's shoulder, light exploded from the blade, flew backward and crashed into a group of archaeologists. When he stood again, his skin was pale gray with shock. "What is happening?" someone shouted. No one had an answer. The blade pulsed again, and new words burned in the air. Words that every translator in the vault suddenly understood, even though the language should have been impossible to read. The PRECURSORS did not vanish. They scattered, THEY hid, THEY forgot, but the blood REMBRS, the air has come. Silence fell over the vault, complete, total silence. Eli could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. "Precursors," a scientist whispered. The crystal of his body rang like a struck bell. "The firstborn, the ones who seeded life across the galaxy. They vanished before any of our species existed, before the stars we orbit were born." "Everyone knows the stories," said slowly. "The precursors created us all, planted life on 1,000 worlds, then disappeared without a trace." His eyes fixed on Eli. "But they were supposed to be gods, unknowable beings of pure energy. Not," he gestured at Eli with obvious disgust, "not this." The blade pulsed one more time. Final words appeared in the air. "They were flesh and blood and bone. They were what the air is. They were human." The word hit the vault like a bomb. Human. The precursors were human. The gods who created all life in the galaxy, the mysterious ancients who built wonders that modern science could not explain, the beings that every species or wondered about or feared. They were the same species that the Coalition mocked for being soft and weak and primitive. "No," the champion growled. "This is a trick, a human trick. Their species barely discovered space travel 20 years ago. They cannot be." "They hid," the scientist interrupted. His voice was trembling. "Do you not understand? The precursors did not die, they hid themselves. They removed their technology, their memories, their power. They became primitive on purpose. They became," he pointed at Eli, "they became human, and they forgot what they were." Eli stared at the blade. His mind was spinning. This could not be real. He was nobody. He was the runt of the Coalition, the joke of the training academy, the soft skin who could not even survive a single punch from a warrior. He could not be the heir of gods. But the blade felt so right in his hand, like it had always been there, like a piece of him had been missing his entire life, and now it was finally home. "What do you want from me?" he whispered to the weapon. The blade answered, but not in words that others could see. It spoke directly into his mind, its voice ancient and vast and somehow kind. "Your ancestors sealed away a great evil. They sacrificed everything to imprison the silence, the devourers who exist between dimensions. They scattered their essence across the cosmos, hoping their children would grow strong enough to stand guard when the prison weakened. The prison is weakening. You must remember, child of the first, you must become what your blood knows you to be." Eli closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids he saw visions, flashes of memory that did not belong to him but felt true anyway. He saw cities that floated between stars. He saw ships that moved faster than light without needing engines. He saw the precursors themselves, humans, but perfected, optimized, beautiful and terrible and powerful beyond imagining. And he saw the war, the darkness that came from outside reality itself, the silence, hungry and endless, consuming suns and planets and the light between them. The precursors fighting with everything they had, dying by the billions, until finally they found a way to seal the enemy away. But sealing was not destroying, and prisons did not last forever. When Eli opened his eyes, everything looked different. Colors were brighter. Sounds were clearer. He could feel the heartbeat of every person in the vault, could sense their fear and confusion and awe pulsing in the air around them. "The weapon is doing something to him," said. He had drawn back, keeping his distance. "His eyes, look at his eyes." Eli did not know what they saw, but he knew what he felt. The blade was changing him, not giving him new abilities, but unlocking ones that had always been there, buried in his DNA like seeds waiting for spring. He was still human, still fragile, still mortal, but he was becoming the human that humanity was always meant to be. "Commander," Eli said, his voice was steady now, calm, "you asked me once why the Coalition wastes resources training my species." Did not answer. His skin had gone pale gray again. "I did not know the answer then," Eli continued, "but I think I understand now. You were not wasting resources. You were training the children of your creators. You just did not know it." Silent, long, terrible silence. Then the champion stepped forward, who had knocked Eli unconscious in training, who had laughed when others carved fragile into his locker, who had called him soft-skinned and meal-sized and every other insult his species could imagine. Dropped to one knee, his massive head bowed toward the floor. "Forgive me," he said. His voice was rough, broken. "I did not know." One by one, others followed. Soldiers, scientists, even Commander. After a long moment of hesitation, they knelt before Eli not because he had conquered them, but because they had just learned that everything they believed about the universe was wrong. Eli looked at them kneeling before him, all these powerful beings, these ancient species, these warriors who had mocked him for months, and he felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a deep, aching sadness. "Stand up," he said quietly. "Please. I am not your king. I am not your god. I am just a soldier who does not understand what is happening to him." Slowly, uncertainly, they rose. "But I know one thing," Eli continued. He raised the blade, and its light filled the vault like a small sun. "Something terrible is coming, something my ancestors died to seal away. And if the blade chose me, it means the seal is breaking." He looked at their faces, and a dozen other species, all of them staring at him with the same expression. Hope, terrified, desperate hope. "I cannot face it alone," Eli said. "Whatever I am becoming, whatever my species was meant to be, I will need allies. I will need you." Stepped forward. His skin had settled into a deep, steady blue. "You will have us," he said, "all of us, whatever comes." Eli nodded. The blade pulsed warmly in his hand, pleased. And in the darkness at the edge of the galaxy, something ancient stirred in its sleep, feeling the first cracks appear in the prison that had held it for 100,000 years. The silence was waking, and it was hungry. The dreams came every night now. Eli would close his eyes and find himself standing in cities that had been dust for 100,000 years. He walked through streets paved with light. He climbed towers that touched the clouds of alien skis. He sat in council chambers where humans, precursors, his ancestors, debated the fate of galaxies with the casual ease of merchants discussing prices. And always at the edge of every dream he saw the darkness, the silence, creeping closer, consuming everything it touched. He woke each morning exhausted, his mind full of memories that did not belong to him. The blade was teaching him, unlocking the knowledge that the precursors had hidden in human DNA before they scattered themselves across the cosmos. It was like learning to remember rather than learning something new. The information had always been there, sleeping in his blood. Now it was waking up. And so was his body. The changes were small at first. His reflexes became faster. His thoughts became clearer. A cut on his hand healed in hours instead of days. He could hold his breath for 10 minutes. He could see colors that human eyes were not supposed to perceive. He was still mortal, still fragile compared to the warriors around him, but he was becoming something more than he had been. The Coalition did not know what to do with him. Word had spread across 12 star systems. The precursors were human. The gods of ancient legend, the creators of all known life, were the ancestors of the soft-skinned primitives that everyone had mocked and dismissed. Some species reacted with joy. Others reacted with terror. A few reacted with rage. Eli found himself summoned before the Coalition High Council, a gathering of leaders from every member species. They sat in a vast circular chamber on the station called Unity Prime, staring at him with expressions that ranged from wonder to hatred. "You claim to be the heir of the precursors," said the representative, his voice dripping with contempt. "You claim that your primitive species created us all. Do you have any proof beyond a light show and some glowing words?" Eli held up the blade. It pulsed once, and suddenly every screen in the chamber lit up with images. Precursor ships, precursor cities, precursor technology, star maps that showed the seeding of life across the galaxy, each point marked with dates that preceded the oldest records by 50,000 years. "This is not proof," the said, but his voice wavered. "This could be fabrication, human lies." "Then explain why the blade accepts only human blood," the elder said quietly. "We tried, all of us tried. Every species sent their greatest champions. The weapon rejected us all. Only the human could hold it." The chamber erupted into argument. Some demanded that humanity be elevated to leadership of the coalition. Others demanded that Earth be quarantined, that humans be contained before they remembered too much and became dangerous. A few voices called for more extreme measures. Eli listened to them shout and felt very tired. "I did not ask for this," he said finally. His voice was not loud, but the blade amplified it, carrying it to every corner of the chamber. The arguing stopped. "I did not ask to be your weapon or your savior or your enemy. A month ago I was a soldier that everyone laughed at. I was nobody." He stood up from his seat and looked at their faces, hundreds of eyes watching him. "But I know what is coming. The blade has shown me. The precursors did not disappear because they were bored or because they evolved beyond physical form. They disappeared because they nearly died fighting something that should not exist. They won, barely, and they sealed the enemy away. Then they scattered and hid and forgot, hoping their descendants would be ready when the seal broke." He raised the blade. Its light filled the chamber. "The seal is breaking. The silence is waking. And it will not care whether you believe in the precursor legacy or not. It will consume you either way." Silence fell over the council. The weight of his words pressed down on them. "How long do we have?" the ambassador asked quietly. "I do not know. Months, maybe weeks. The blade cannot tell me exactly. But the silence is already moving. Stars are going dark at the edge of coalition space. Patrol ships are disappearing without trace or signal." Fear rippled through the chamber. Eli could feel it like cold water spreading across the floor. "What do you want from us?" the representative demanded. His contempt had faded, replaced by something that looked like desperation. "Nothing," Eli said. "I want nothing from you. I am not here to rule or to demand or to conquer. But if you want to survive what is coming, you will need to work together. All of you, every species, every ship, every soldier." He paused. "Including my people." The council debated for 3 more days. In the end, they agreed to form a unified defense force. Ships from every species would gather at the galaxy's core. Resources would be shared. Old grudges would be set aside. Not everyone accepted this decision. On the 3rd night, Eli was attacked in his quarters. 6 warriors burst through his door, their scales painted with the markings of an extremist faction that refused to accept human authority. They carried blades and fury, an absolute certainty that killing Eli would restore the natural order of things. Eli did not remember the fight clearly afterward. His body moved without conscious thought. The blade sang in his hand, moving faster than his eyes could follow. By the time his mind caught up, 6 lay on the ground. 4 were unconscious. 2 were dead. He stood in the center of his ruined quarters, blood dripping from wounds he could not feel, and stared at the bodies. He had killed beings who were supposed to be 3 times stronger than any human. He had done it in seconds. And it had been easy, so terribly, horrifyingly easy. Commander found him still standing there an hour later. The looked at the bodies, then at Eli, and his skin shifted to a deep, understanding blue. "You did what you had to do," said quietly. "I killed them." Eli's voice was hollow. I did not even think about it, I just killed them. They came to murder you, to murder the only person who might be able to save us from extinction. You defended yourself. That is not what frightens me. Eli finally looked up from the bodies. His eyes were wet. What frightens me is how easy it was, how natural it felt. I am becoming something, Commander, something powerful, something dangerous. And I do not know if I will still be me when the transformation is complete. Was silent for a long moment. Then he put one of his 4 hands on Eli's shoulder. I mocked you, he said. When you first arrived at the academy, I called you weak, primitive, a waste of resources. I was wrong. You were not wrong, I was weak. You were never weak, his grip tightened. You were simply not yet what you were meant to be. Strength does not come from scales or crystal bones or living for 10,000 years. Strength comes from standing up after you are knocked down, from continuing forward when everything tells you to stop. You had that strength before the blade ever chose you. The blade simply recognized what was already there. Eli looked at his old commander, the being who had once treated him with such contempt, and saw something new in his eyes. Respect. Real respect, earned through pain and transformation. The silence is coming, Eli said quietly. Yes. We might not be able to stop it. We might all die. Yes. Eli took a deep breath. The blade pulsed warmly in his hand, patient and eternal. Then we should stop wasting time, he said. There is work to do. 3 days later, Coalition sensors detected something at the edge of explored space. A colony world of 2 million souls went dark. When scout ships arrived, they found nothing. Not ruins, not bodies, not even debris. The planet's mass itself had been consumed. The silence was no longer waking. It was awake, and it was hungry. Earth looked small from orbit, a blue and green marble floating in the darkness, surrounded by a handful of primitive satellites and a few Coalition patrol ships. Eli had not been home in 3 years. He had left as a young man with dreams of seeing the stars. He was returning as something else entirely. The blade hummed against his hip as the shuttle descended through the atmosphere. It knew they were close to the place where the precursors had hidden themselves, close to the secrets that had been buried beneath human feet for 100,000 years. The readings are extraordinary, said Doctor, the human scientist who had insisted on accompanying the mission. She stared at her instruments with wide eyes. There is a massive energy signature beneath the Pacific Ocean. Depth suggests it has been there since before human civilization began. Since before humans evolved at all, Eli corrected quietly. The precursors built it when they scattered. They knew that one day their descendants would need it. A seed vault, Doctor whispered. They left us a seed vault. The descent into the ocean took 6 hours. Coalition submarines carried them down through layers of crushing pressure and absolute darkness. At the bottom, miles below the surface, they found a door. It was carved into the bedrock itself, covered in the same script that marked Eli's blade. The door recognized his blood. It opened. Behind it lay a city, a precursor city perfectly preserved, stretching for miles beneath the ocean floor. Ships rested in docking bays, their hulls still gleaming after 100. Machines hummed with power that had never faded. Lights activated as Eli walked through the corridors, welcoming him home. This is impossible, Commander said. He had insisted on coming despite the risks. His skin shifted through colors of awe and disbelief. This technology is more advanced than anything the Coalition has ever seen, more advanced than anything we dreamed was possible. The precursors were more than human, Eli said, unless they had power we cannot imagine, but they also had fear. They built all of this and then they chose to forget it. They chose to become primitive again, to become us. Why? Eli walked to a central console and placed his hand on its surface. Information flooded into his mind, schematics, histories, battle plans. The precursors had prepared for this moment. They had known the silence would eventually break free. They had left everything their descendants would need to fight back. Because they were tired, Eli said finally. They had fought the silence for 10,000 years. They had watched billions of their people die. When they finally sealed the enemy away, they had nothing left. No hope, no strength, no will to continue existing as what they were. He turned to face. So they chose to start over, to become something new, something innocent. They hoped that fresh eyes and fresh hearts would succeed where tired, broken souls had only barely survived. He activated the shipyard. Around them, ancient vessels began to wake. Their engines sang with energies that bent physics in ways coalition science could not explain. Sleek and predatory, they rose from their berths like predators stretching after a long sleep. These are Covenant ships, Eli said, designed specifically to fight the silence. They will not be enough on their own. Nothing will be enough on its own, but they will help. News of the discovery spread across Earth in hours. Humanity had spent 18 years as the newcomers to galactic civilization, the primitives who had stumbled into a universe full of ancient and powerful species. Now they learned that they were not newcomers at all. They were the original, the firstborn, the children of gods who had simply forgotten their inheritance. Eli expected fear. He expected denial. What he found instead was something that made his heart swell with pride. Humans began to volunteer. They came from every corner of the planet. Farmers and scientists and teachers and artists, young people and old people and everyone in between. They did not have powers. They did not have ancient weapons bonded to their blood. They were just ordinary humans who had learned that something terrible was coming to devour their galaxy. And they refused to hide. "We cannot take all of you," Eli told the crowds gathered at the recruitment centers. "Most of you have no combat training. Many of you would die in the first battle." A woman in the front row, middle-aged, wearing a mechanic's coverall, stepped forward. "Then train us," she said simply, "or use us as support staff, or put us in the engine rooms of those fancy ships of yours. We do not care. We just want to help." "Why?" The woman smiled. It was a tired smile, but fierce. "Because we are human. Because our ancestors apparently created all life in this galaxy. Because there are people out there who spent 18 years mocking us and dismissing us, and now they need us." Her smile widened. "And because we do not know how to give up. It is not in our nature." Eli looked at the crowd behind her. Thousands of faces, all showing the same stubborn determination. He thought about the precursors, his ancestors, who had been so tired and broken that they chose to forget everything they were. They had hoped their descendants would be different. They were different. They were magnificently, wonderfully different. "Then welcome aboard," Eli said. Over the following weeks, the Allied fleet gathered at the galaxy's core. Coalition ships from every species arrived in waves, their commanders reporting to a human for the first time in history. Many of them struggled with this. They were bred for war, taking orders from a soft skin, went against every instinct they possessed. They had existed for millions of years. Deferring to a species that barely lived a century seemed absurd. But they came anyway. Because the silence was eating stars, and Eli Vance was the only one the ancient weapon had chosen. Was among the first to arrive. The warrior who had once knocked Eli unconscious now commanded a battle cruiser with a crew of 3,000. He approached Eli during a strategy meeting and dropped to one knee. "I carved the word into your locker," said. His voice was heavy with shame. "Fragile, I wanted to humiliate you, to remind you that you did not belong." "I remember." "I was wrong," looked up. His yellow eyes were bright with emotion. "You were never fragile. You were simply waiting to become what you were meant to be. I am here now to follow your orders. Whatever you command, I will do. My life is yours to spend however you see fit." Eli reached down and put his hand on Scaled shoulder. "I do not want your life," he said quietly. "I want your courage. I want your strength. I want you to stand beside me, not behind me. We are going to face something that nearly destroyed my ancestors. I will need allies, not servants. Rose slowly. For a long moment, he simply stared at Eli. Then, very carefully, he extended his arm in the gesture of brotherhood. Eli clasped it. Allies then said, Allies. The days passed too quickly. Scouts reported that the silence was moving faster now, consuming entire star systems as it spread inward toward the galaxy's core. Refugees flooded into coalition space, bringing tales of planets that simply vanished, of darkness that swallowed light itself, of a hunger that could not be reasoned with or escaped. On the eve of the final battle, Eli stood on the observation deck of his flagship, a precursor vessel he had named Hope, because that was what they were fighting for. The gathered fleet stretched before him, thousands of ships from every species in the coalition, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. It did not feel like enough. You are afraid, the blade said in his mind. Yes. Good, fear means you understand what is at stake. Only fools face the silence without fear. Eli closed his eyes. Behind them he saw the visions again, precursors dying by the billions, stars going dark, reality itself being consumed by something that should not exist. My ancestors sealed the silence away, he said. They sacrificed everything to do it, and it still was not enough. It still broke free eventually. Yes. What makes you think I can do better? The blade was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was gentle. Because you are not alone. Your ancestors fought as one species against an enemy that had already consumed 100 others. They were powerful but isolated. You have allies. You have the trust of beings your ancestors never knew. And you have something the precursors lost long before the final battle. What? Hope, real, stubborn, irrational hope. The kind that refuses to die even when death is certain. Eli opened his eyes. Through the window he could see the edge of the galaxy. Stars were going dark in the distance. The silence was coming. Then let us see if hope is enough, he said. Behind him, the fleet began to move. The edge of the galaxy was dying. Eli stood on the bridge of the Hope and watched through the as stars vanished one by one, not exploding, not collapsing, simply disappearing, consumed by a darkness that moved like living hunger. The silence spread across the void like oil on water, and where it passed, nothing remained. The dimensional rift hung at the center of the darkness, a tear in reality itself, bleeding wrongness into the universe. It had been small when the precursors first sealed it 100,000 years ago. Now it stretched across light years, and it was still growing. All ships report ready, Commander said. His skin was pale gray with fear, but his voice was steady. The fleet awaits your command. Eli looked at the tactical display. 3,000 ships from every coalition species. The largest military force ever assembled. Against the rift and the silence, it looked like a handful of sparks facing an ocean of night. Begin the attack, Eli said. The fleet surged forward. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked toward the rift like shooting stars. Coalition ships entered the zone of silence, firing everything they had at an enemy that had no form, no shape, no vulnerable points to target. It was not enough. The silence consumed ships the way fire consumed paper. Vessels simply vanished, their crews gone between one heartbeat and the next. Eli watched the tactical display fill with red markers as ship after ship winked out of existence. The third fleet is gone, reported. His voice cracked. The crystalline squadron is gone. We are losing dozens of ships per minute. Keep firing. It is not working. Nothing is working. Eli closed his eyes. The blade pulsed against his side, warm and patient. Show me, he whispered to it. Show me what my ancestors did. Show me how they won. Images flooded his mind. He saw precursor ships diving into the rift, their crews sacrificing themselves to force the tier closed. He saw billions of humans pouring their life energy into a seal that would hold for 100. He saw the terrible truth that the blade had been hiding from him. The precursors had not won through power. They had won through sacrifice. They had used their own lives to seal the rift, burning themselves out like candles thrown into an inferno. That was why they scattered afterward. That was why they forgot. Not because they were tired, but because so few of them were left. The seal requires life force, Eli said slowly. The precursors poured their essence into it, their souls, their existence itself. Then we must do the same, said. He stood. Tell me what you need. I will gather volunteers. We will. No, Eli opened his eyes. My ancestors ran and hid and forgot. They chose that path because they had nothing left, no hope, no other option. They burned themselves out because that was the only way they knew. He stood from his command chair and walked to the center of the bridge. Around him, the crew watched with wide eyes. I will not repeat their mistake, Eli said. There has to be another way. What other way? Demanded. The fleet is being destroyed. The rift is growing if we do not act now. Then I will find a way. Eli gripped the blade tightly. Broadcast to all channels, every ship, every species. I need to speak to everyone. The communication system activated. Eli's image appeared on every screen in the fleet and then spread outward across the coalition's vast network. He was not speaking to thousands. He was speaking to trillions. My name is Eli Vance, he said. A few months ago I was nobody, a human soldier that everyone mocked, the weakest person in every room I entered. My species was considered primitive, fragile, a joke. He held up the blade. Its light filled the bridge. Then I learned the truth. Humanity is not primitive. We are the descendants of the precursors, the beings who seeded life across this galaxy before any other species existed. We forgot what we were because our ancestors chose to forget. They scattered and hid because they had lost hope. The blade pulsed. Outside, the silence continued to consume ships, but Eli kept speaking. I am not asking you to have hope in me. I am not asking you to believe in human superiority or precursor destiny or any of that. I am asking you to remember something simple. He looked directly at the camera. You are more than prey, all of you, every species, every person. The darkness is only dark until someone lights a fire. He raised the blade higher. Its glow intensified, spreading outward like ripples on a pond. I need you to remember. I need every human who can hear my voice to remember what we were meant to be. Not rulers, not gods, not masters. We were meant to be the light that holds back the darkness. And I cannot do that alone. Something happened then that Eli did not expect. Across the fleet, humans began to glow. It started with the crew of the Hope. Human officers and soldiers, descendants of precursors all, began to shine with pale light. The same light that the blade produced. The same light that had been buried in human DNA for 100,000 years. Then it spread. Ships with human crew members lit up across the tactical display. Transmission feeds showed humans glowing on coalition stations, on refugee vessels, on distant planets across the galaxy. The precursor legacy was not in one air. It was in all of them. Every human carried the seed of what their ancestors had been. And Eli was waking them up. What is happening? Breathed. They are remembering, Eli said. He could feel them. Millions of minds connecting to his through the blade. Their strength flowed into him and his strength flowed into them. All of them. They are remembering what we forgot. He closed his eyes and reached outward. The power that filled him was vast beyond comprehension, not his own power but the combined will of millions of humans who had heard his call and answered. They gave him their hope, their courage, their stubborn, irrational refusal to accept defeat. Eli channeled that power through the blade, but he did not aim it at the rift's seal. He did not try to close the door. He aimed it at the silence itself. The blade screamed. Light exploded from its edge, not the gentle glow of before but a blazing sun that filled the void. The energy struck the silence, and for the first time the darkness reacted. It recoiled. It trembled. It was afraid. "You sealed my ancestors away," Eli said. His voice echoed across dimensions. "You thought you had won. You thought that when the prison broke, you would simply consume everything that remained." He pushed harder. More humans joined the connection. Billions of them now, across the entire galaxy, adding their will to his. But we did not forget how to fight. We did not forget how to hope. We did not forget what you feared most about the beings who created all life in this galaxy. The light intensified. The silence screamed, not in sound but in a wrongness that made reality itself shudder. "We remember." The combined will of humanity struck the dimensional rift like a hammer, but Eli was not trying to seal it. He was not sacrificing human lives to build a prison that would eventually break again. He was doing something far more profound. He was unmaking the silence itself. The precursors had written the laws of the cosmos. They had created stars and planets and the conditions for life to flourish. The silence was an intruder from outside those laws, a wrongness that should never have existed. And now, channeling the power of billions of their descendants, Eli was editing it out of reality. The rift did not close. It vanished. The silence did not retreat. It ceased to exist. The dark stars at the edge of the galaxy flickered, then blazed back to life as the thing that had consumed them was erased from the universe entirely. When it was over, Eli collapsed. He woke 3 days later in a medical bay on Unity Prime. His body had aged 20 years in minutes. Gray streaked his hair. Lines marked his face. The blade lay beside his bed, quiet now, its purpose fulfilled. Commander sat in a chair beside him. The skin was a deep, peaceful blue. "The silence is gone," said. "Truly gone. Our scientists have confirmed it. The dimensional rift has closed and there is no trace of the enemy remaining." Eli nodded slowly. His body ached in ways he had never experienced before. "The fleet. We lost many, too many, but far fewer than we expected." Leaned forward. "You did something no one thought possible. You united every human in the galaxy through sheer force of will, and you used that connection to destroy an enemy that nearly ended the precursors themselves." "I did not do it alone." "No, you did not," smiled, a strange expression on a face but genuine. "That is exactly the point." The coalition offered Eli a throne. They offered him command of every fleet, authority over every species, power beyond imagining. He refused all of it. "We did not come back to rule," he told the High Council. "Humanity did not remember our heritage so that we could dominate the galaxy. We remembered it because you needed us, because the darkness was coming and someone had to light a fire." He stood with difficulty, his aged body protesting every movement. "We will stand beside you as allies, as equals, as family. That is what the precursors should have done from the beginning. That is what we will do now." A month later, Eli returned to Prime, to the training academy where everything had begun. His old locker was still there, the word fragile still carved into its surface. New recruits filled the training hall. Humans and training together as equals for the first time in coalition history. They stopped when Eli entered, staring at him with awe and reverence. Eli walked to his locker and ran his fingers over the carved letters. Then he turned to face the recruits. "The word is not wrong," he said. His voice was soft, but everyone heard him. "We break, we bleed, we die. Humans are fragile. We always were and we always will be." He smiled. "But we get back up. Every time we fall, we stand again. Every time we break, we heal stronger. That is what makes us dangerous. Not power, not technology, not ancient weapons or genetic destiny, just the stubborn, irrational refusal to stay down." He walked toward the door, passing through the rows of young soldiers who watched him with shining eyes. "Remember that," he said. "Whatever challenges you face, whatever enemies you fight, whatever anyone says about you or your species or your place in this galaxy, you are not weak. You are simply not yet what you were meant to be." He stepped out into the sunlight of a galaxy that would never mock humanity again. Behind him on his old locker, the word fragile remained, a reminder, a memorial, a promise that strength was not about never breaking. It was about always getting back up.